and gentlemen, welcome back to the Extraordinary Technology Conference 2016. Tonight, I get to introduce you to a man. He's been absent from our conferences for a little while. His information is absolutely invaluable in a number of areas. Several years ago, I was starting out my hydrogen research, and I was hitting a brick wall. I was hitting a dead end, and I jumped into the car and drove from Colorado to Tennessee with $200 in my pocket and a hydrogen device that I built in the trunk. And I drove to Tennessee to meet with this man, to study in his shop, and to learn what I was doing wrong. And his information, I still use his information to this very day as I continue my hydrogen and plasma research. And that was close to 8 years ago. So I would like you to give a warm welcome to a great man who has flavored and put his signature on a huge amount of the research that is happening all over the world. Millions of hours of research have been fostered because of this man on stage. I'd like you to welcome Bob Boyce.
Thank you. Thank you, Vernon. Hopefully it won't be too long. As he said, my name is Bob Boyce. I've been doing water research and hydrogen research and many other types of research for many years. This all started with the hydrogen technology, but most of you know that, well, many of you know that we actually ran race boats on hydrogen on demand. And that technology was not over Unity. What we were doing was we were essentially running the hydrogen generator on battery, running the engine, changing out the battery between heats. What we were able to do, though, was we were able to win races with that boat. And we were able to get the attention of people that were at the races. We were not trying to sell hydrogen products. We were trying to sell fuel induction systems. So at that time, all I really cared about was, getting the technology out there of what we were doing. Had really nothing to do with the hydrogen itself. So while I was doing that, I discovered an effect that I called resonance. And that was when one of the rectifiers in an alternator on one of the boats had shorted. And at a particular RPM, gas production would rise dramatically, and the gas quality changed. So I took that boat and I put it in a dyno tank, which is where you put the engine into a water tank, you run it, and we were able to put test equipment on the electrical system, and we found what was going on. When Maury King was talking about the resonance and the frequency of 42.8 kilohertz, we actually measured that coming out of the alternator going into the electrical system, and that was a waveform that was superimposed upon the power that was going to the system. So that's what led me to come up with this technology here. The 100-cell box, there's 101 plates end to end, stacked in series, 1/8 inch spacing. I developed this in 2002, was when I finally, it was 2 years of development. As you can see, here's the box. This is the hydrogen output. These electrical wires are all connected to this toroid. The toroid is driven by the controller, which is here, and this is a DC bias power supply. The DC bias power supply allows you to control the density of the water that's in the cells. You apply DC potential from end to end, and then you modulate that potential with the waveform, which is essentially what was happening in the marine application, where the waveform was superimposed upon the DC. This creates a higher voltage DC because there's 100 cells in series. I don't know if you can see this, but it's approximately 165 volts being applied end to end, and then that's the current being applied. We use the variac over here to adjust that bias supply. We turn on the controller. We've got it set for specific frequencies: 42.8, 21.4, and 10.7 kilohertz. Now, the 42.8 is the primary, the 21.4 is the secondary, and they are tuned so that they create a scalar event. Both waveforms strike essentially at the same time every other cycle, like a double tap. And then every fourth cycle, the 10.7 would kick in and give another wham to it. And what we found was that was breaking the water apart much faster. Now, of course, breaking water apart doesn't really give you your hydrogen if you can't keep it apart, if you don't supply enough electrons to the process in order to keep them from recombining. So one of the things that I used in this toroid core, I was driving it in a non-Hertzian manner from the controller, which I'm going to actually go through. Which way do I point this? It's not advancing. Oh, here we go. Okay, now it is. All right. This is the toroid primaries. There's a couple of toroids there. You see the blue on the one side, that indicates bottom. The green, it's all over. As you can see, they're wound in a specific pattern. Solid fill on the inside, and kind of sloppy on the outside, but you'll see in later photos what we do. Again, it's not advancing again. Okay, all right. After we've wrapped it, and like I said, this is after the windings have been straightened out, then we wind secondaries, and there's 3 120-degree phase secondaries. That's the toroid with the primaries and the secondaries wound. This is where we straighten the windings out. We actually took pieces of weed whacker cord, 80 thousandths, and put it in between the ends, put a wrap of tape around the perimeter to hold them in place, and then lined everything up. You want this to be as accurate as possible so that when the energy couples from the primaries to the secondary, it couples properly. One of the things that you need to understand about Nikola Tesla's technology is that it is non-Hertzian in nature. This applies to all true Tesla coils. Non-Hertzian does not mean ground wave. You can do things with ground wave, but that's not what Tesla did. Tesla's technology was based on non-Hertzian energy, non-electromagnetic. I'll get into that in a bit. When you use this technology, not only are you getting the energy that you're putting in back out, but you're also coupling into energy from the environment. That energy from the environment will flow into the secondary and provide additional energy. Tesla claimed that he could get 100 to 1 for, say, 1 watt in, 100 watts out. Now, I haven't been able to achieve that type of level of amplification, but I have achieved 30, 40 to 1. There we go. Oh, back. I pushed it and it took a while. Is it a low battery or something? There we go. All right, this is the controller. This particular one is a PWM3F, I believe. I've had multiple generations. Current generation is PWM3G. And it is the three-phase driver that drives the toroid. You have 3 FETs. You've got 3 frequency generation stages that are dual 555 timers, so they're 556. One half is set up as a pulse generator. The other half is set up to be able to adjust the width of the pulse. So one is a frequency time base, the other is a pulse width. The circuit's modified. Normal adjustability on these circuits is 10% pulse width to 90% pulse width. This has been specially modified to do 0 to 10%. Typical pulse width in this is going to be in the less than 1% region. Now this is where I was telling you that I was going to get into the pulsing and what it refers to. When you send an electrical signal down a wire, say you connect up a coil, you know that current flows, but there is a time period at which no current flows. The potential you apply as it travels down the wire lines up the domains in the wire. The wire is not actually conductive until the domains are lined up from end to end. Then current can begin to flow. This is what is missing from most of Tesla's public information. If you apply potential to that wire and you remove that potential prior to the domains lining up all the way to the end, no current will flow, but the domains will line up. When you remove that potential, after no current has flowed, the only current that you've input is what's required to line up those domains. When those domains collapse back to normal state, you still get the pulse, like inductive pulse, like as if you had spent current. Okay, that is a non-Hertzian event. You don't create a magnetic field. That's what this controller does. It allows you to drive these windings in a non-Hertzian manner. So you spend very little energy generating the conditions to allow this to happen. That's how you can get the energy gain. That's also how you can send electricity wirelessly without using electromagnetics. I did a lot of this, the booster stuff and the 100-cell box stuff, was really promoting the heck out of it. I hooked up with many other people, great people, and some not so great, and was helping them market this stuff. I didn't get into manufacturing this stuff myself. I built my own prototypes, that was it. So I didn't get involved in the marketing of hydroxy gas or HHO systems. But I did promote it. I went public with my information. I wanted the technology to get out there to the people because this can benefit a lot of people. Okay? So I contacted Patrick Kelly. I told him to go on the forums and find the information where I had published all these various details individually over a period of time because frankly, I had been threatened, and I cannot disclose all this information anymore. I can give you what's out there already, but I am restricted from doing certain things. Many don't know that I had filed a patent. It was granted in 1981. My patent was NSO'd, National Secrecy Order. So I cannot bring the full technology to the public, but I had developed vehicles that ran totally on water, utilizing the technology, but it can only be done for governmental applications because of the classification. However, what I did put out, I put out up to the level, just at the level of classification, where I could get by without getting in trouble. Once they NSO something, by the way, you're allowed to do your experimentation, but you're not allowed to market or go public with it. So I started over, cut back on the number of catalysts that I use. By the way, my process is not electrolysis. It's catalysis using catalysts. And I have in the classified level, there's 7 platinum metal group catalysts used in the process. So it takes very little energy to break the water apart to begin with. That level of technology is 332% efficiency as compared to 100% efficient Faraday electrolysis. What I was allowed to do was bring it up to, you can only go up to 120%, anything over 120%, and they'll slam you with it. So, one of the guys that I worked with had approached me to become a licensed manufacturer, and I worked with him. We built units, and I couldn't share with him anything beyond what I was allowed to share. And when a licensed manufacturer, when they sign the license agreement, they get what's called trade secrets. And that is the process of how the catalysts are applied, how to properly cleanse and condition the plates, essentially. That information is already out there within the document, D9.pdf by Patrick Kelly. How to prepare the plates. By the way, in there's a magnetic process wrapping the stack of plates with wire. That's not mine. I don't know where that came from. He found it on there and attributed it to me, but it's not me. I don't do that. These plates are astensic, which means they're non-magnetic. The only part that's magnetic is where you shear it or cut it with a laser and you disturb the metal. But there's part that's buried in the slots. It's not important. Because when you operate the cells, they create a magnetic field. And when they're in series, the magnetic fields add up and increases the efficiency of the process. Well, in response to working with this gentleman, I'm waiting for it to switch. And some of you probably heard, that I had come down with cancer. I had been chipped. I had been drugged and chipped with a set of RFID tracking chips that had been dipped in a radioactive isotope. And for a few years, there we go. These are surgical photos from the surgeon, because there was a lot of people that said, oh, you don't have cancer, and you weren't chipped. Well, the surgeon cut the cancer out. That's the tumor that was on my shoulder. These photos are actually from my website, and you can see he's grabbed the chip with the tweezers. Come on. There we go. He's put it next to it. These are just, there's 3 photos here, and they're on my website, www.bobboyce.org. That's the chip in the evidence container, okay? When we ran a check on the ESN, the electronic serial number in the RFID chip, it came back to a lot that had been sold to the NSA. And that was where it ended, because NSA has blanket immunity. They can pretty much do what they want. Just so you know that the gentleman that did this is now serving 15 years in prison. So he's out of the picture.
The surgeon?
No, I'm talking about the gentleman that was responsible for me being chipped. The type of cancer that I had is the kind that they typically give to scientists that they want to do away with. Desmoplastic malignant melanoma. There is no cure, there is no treatment other than actual surgery. So I had to, essentially I was on my own. So I had to study cancer and learn how to fight it. And with the power of God, I was able to beat it. So I had lost interest with all the fighting that I've done on the forums and all that. I dropped out of the forums. I decided that I wanted to do something different. I knew about the technology, about how to interact with the dominant energy field. Dominant energy, by the way, is like the Amish term for longitudinal energy or dark energy. Dark energy flows out of the black hole at the center of our galaxy. It travels 1.46 times the speed of light. This has been measured. And dark energy is also known as non-Hertzian energy. I can't go into too much detail on this because some of this technology is classified, and I am bound by my security clearance. But I developed a 3-phase driver, which is what you see here. I brought the boards over here. These are early prototypes that drove the 3-phase toroid, and I was able to create the same condition like what we would do in the water, except using it to create a condition in the batteries. We do not operate the batteries at 42.8 kilohertz because you don't want to disassociate the water in your batteries. A good way to ruin your batteries, by the way. So we drive this into a battery through a regeneration circuit to actually generate electricity. Now the battery receives it as pulsed longitudinal energy, reacts with the water, and charges the battery. I'm sure you've all heard of the Bedini system, does very similar, charges the battery. So lead acid battery technology can be charged using this technology. Okay, that's the circuit board. This is a generation. AC1 is hex controller 1. By the way, I did actually put one of those hex controllers up on eBay when I was clearing out all of my old stuff. I kept one, but I sold one off, and somebody actually bought it, and I don't know if the guy that bought it is here or not, or whether it's even been used. But this is a hex controller 2. This is the next generation. You see on the lower right where it says regen output, right here? Okay. These are the outputs from each of these 6 channels. Hex controller means 6-channel controller, microprocessor, and the regen output's out here. I take the output from the regeneration diodes here, come through this toroid. This toroid strips off harmful energy patterns. So it's one of the things that we had problems with. Electronics do not like longitudinal energy or non-Hertzian energy, especially silicone electronics. These are not silicone diodes. But in order to make this power safe to go in to something that has electrons applied to it, we would put a choke in here that's designed to inhibit longitudinal energy and only allow the regeneration output transverse to pass. The problem is, when you do this, you diminish the capacity of the charging on the battery because you're only getting the transverse that makes it through. What these diodes here can convert, which is a fraction of a percent of the total energy that you can get. So this is the latest generation. This is a PWM 3H, H for hex controller, but it's only 3 channels. Tri-controller was already taken, by the way. So I still have the same basic configuration, VETs, voltage regulators that power the circuitry. If you notice, there's no choke on here. Okay? So you can take the output from that and directly connect it to the battery. But when you do this, you cannot power any electronics from that battery while you're charging it. What I found, because it will destroy anything that's silicone-based. Our modern electronics is mostly silicone-based and is incompatible with this type of energy. So if you want to charge up a solar power system battery, you disconnect from the system and connect this to it. That way you're not going to fry anything. And that's where I ended. I was going to bring this out on the market, because it could be used for fracturing water or charging batteries. There is a disable here, so if you put a voltage regulator on there, monitor, you can short those pins and it shuts the board down, stops it until the battery voltage drops and you bring it back on. And on this side is a mode, and that was intended so that you can have no jumper there and use it, and it'll run 42.8, 21.4 and 10.7 megahertz in the proper format to create the hydrogen. Or you could put the jumper on and it would operate as the battery charging mode. Now that's for the last part. That's about spyware. All right. So that's what led me to develop what I call the battery smacker. The battery smacker is a device that uses a board like this, but it is single phase. Since it's not having to fracture water, it doesn't need the extra help. This takes in power from a wall wart. Doesn't take much current at all. You're only powering the microprocessor, essentially, and the drivers. It creates those very short pulses The toroid is contained in here, and the anti-toroid is contained here. The anti-toroid is what removes the longitudinal energy so it doesn't damage what is connected to here. But it will desulfate and charge the battery that's connected here. Again, it's driven with non-Hertzian energy, but it has two programs that run in it. It has essentially both of the programs here, except not for water. It has a transverse output, and it switches back and forth between transverse and non-Hertzian. So it's designed essentially to charge and desulfate batteries. It's really good at desulfating batteries. These are Brother Andrew from Hydrogen in the Garage has a table out here. He's got some of these out there. The main reason I'm at this event, though, because, again, a lot of my history on this technology is already out there. But this needed to be brought out on the market. This is a water smacker. This essentially has similar technology as this, except this puts it into water in a resonance cavity. The rod and the inside shield are of a resonant length. There's a DC-to-DC converter that runs a Tesla coil. Now, this is where I need to tell you, a Tesla coil, a real Tesla coil, is driven with a non-Hertzian energy, and it does not have an iron core. It has an air core. And very important, the weight, the mass of the primary and the mass of the secondary must be matched. The common transformers that are out there now with laminated iron cores are energy wasters. You typically lose about 25% of what you're putting through it. Tesla found that if you matched the mass of the primary and the secondary, you had the maximum amount of coupling from primary to secondary. So what he would do is take a larger number of turns of small wire and a smaller number of turns of bigger wire, match the mass, wind the transformer, and use it, and get a very efficient energy coupling. The Department of Defense, when they put out any requests for something to be built, they always specify a Tesla-type transformer. Try finding one of those today, though. Yet they have to be made specially. And pertaining to that, the boards that are in these things,